Oh man. Good morning. I don't think I'm ready for this today. Okay. Oh dear. I am disorganized this morning. Good morning, Mojo. Good morning, online. How you doing? I was trying to get stuff together and I was trying to get some stuff done before stream so that I could just move into some of the more fun stuff. And I got sidetracked watching a Gran Turismo stream and I have had to order new I've got these Sennheiser, however you pronounce it, Sennheiser headphones, and they have the over-the-ear things, which I kind of like the idea of, but the metal in them has snapped. They pop out from my ears, I was saying this yesterday or the other day, and the left one has just got to the point now where I've tried to push it around my ear so many times I've snapped it in two places, so now it just will not sit on my ear, and I just feel it popping out, and it just irritates me. So now I've only got one earphone in, but I don't even know why I'm doing that because I don't listen to anything when I'm streaming. So there we go. Okay, solved. I just hear my voice a little bit weirder. Okay, I'm in a mood. Okay, so last night I got the. So we ended the stream yesterday on getting the sprints queried. Last night I made a change on the client. So realize that the time that we send up has to be the time from that UTC from that user now for it to be offset. So it will be 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. when they pull it back, and whoever else gets it in whichever time zone they're in will get it relative to that time, right? So the time they set is the time it is to them now. But it's Friday. It is Friday. I've got one of the busiest Fridays lined up that I've ever had, which is frustrating as well. So it's going to be a challenge today. Um, yeah. So yeah, so we got the time. So I made that change. That's this. So I'm using Day.js and I pull in the UTC module from Day.js, and then I just go and convert whatever time they've selected in the date time of the sprint, convert it to UTC, and then pass up the UTC strings, and then that works. Um, so it does mean that the API expects the time to come in UTC or as UTC. So everything else will be, off if you don't feed that. But being that I'm in full control of the API and full control of the client right now, I'm not particularly worried about that part. So the next part is to get the ability to assign the sprint. So now we've got the GraphQL piece. We can build the UI to do the drop down, but now we need to get the piece to assign the sprint to the task. So I did that last night. So now when you go to put, and only on put, so I thought through this case. When you're creating the task, maybe you want to assign it to a sprint, but in reality, I don't want to guide that behavior right now because if you're creating tasks and the sprint is already ready, you're probably up against the wire, and that's not a behavior I want to encourage right this second. So I want to make it difficult for right now. Um, no, we're not starting the stream with you jumping up. That is not happening. Go lie down. Go lie down. Don't look at me like that. Um, no, we're not start. No, we're not starting the stream like no. We're not starting the stream like this. Um, come on, bud. Come on. So, so I modified the. What's the matter? Hello. So I modified the task to include the sprint identifier and did the code on this side of things. So that should work. I've got unit tests around it, but so when updating the associated sprint, all right, we publish the event, etc., etc., etc. So I'm confident that'll work. So don't be crying, dog. It's fine. So rather than like go and test that and do all that now, I'm going to get the other side of it working, which is the consume, so that when I do assign the sprint, the task will already have that information, and I can pull that down, and we can work on the views. No, come on, lie down, lie down, whichever word you want to use. Come on, down. There's no cookies. No. Um. So yeah, we're going to do this part. So this is an update. We're going to track the updated user. We're going to need to validate that the associated sprint ID matches. And no, bud, you cannot come and sit on my lap. No. What's the matter? Go lay down. Do you want outside? Sorry. He's going to have one of those days. So we're going to get the update task to pass the sprint identifier in. We're then going to need an acquire sprint, right? Because again, every time we need something that as a foreign key, I'm not storing. I'm making a relevant object for that thing. Now, you could argue that I don't need to do that, but it does mean that if I have something that updates that sprint later and tracks that object separately, that any associated fields, any associated data, if I want to track stuff just for the view, if there's like other data that's going to be attached to there, I can do that. Like I could do calculations as to number of active stories or things like that. I could actually attach them to that sprint object and pull that so I don't have to keep calculating that and using query. So again, I can modify the view specific to the use case. So it's useful to have that data. And rather than stick to just the identifier. Will you stop, please? What's the matter? You are not sitting on my lap. No. We're not doing pair programming that way. Look, he's aware that your headphones are off. Yeah, probably. So so yeah, I'm going to continue the pattern. The pattern works, and I'm okay with doing it. So what are you doing, bud? He's just lying on my left arm. Okay, go on. Um, you've got food, you've got water, you've been out. Now lay down. You're not coming sitting on my lap. No. It might get noisy for a minute. If it does, I will mute it. Okay, so we're gonna do GUID associated sprint identifier, right? These are nullable, and normally I don't like sticking nullables in between everything else. But the reality is that on the other side, when we pass these commands, we will always pass what we have. So if it is null, it'll be null because it'll come out of the event null. So it's not like I have to worry about whether it's null or not. So let's make sure they all. So here I can do associated sprint identifier null. So I can explicitly state that for the testing, but it's not going to bother me otherwise. Associated sprint identifier. No. I don't know how much of that you can hear on the stream. I'm hoping for your sake it's cutting some of it out. Loki. No, bud. No. Okay. I'm going to see if he wants out, and that's why he's crying. He normally doesn't make noise, so I'll be right back. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so these should build. The receiver's going to fail. Let's just make sure that's just passing through that associated sprint identifier again, because this could be null, but you know, to the command it doesn't matter. So there's no worry about having those nullable arguments there to me. So in this case, we're going to specify the actual associated sprint identifier. We're going to pass that in, and what we're looking for is the sprint ID. So this should have failed because I haven't done anything yet with it. He wants to bother. Bentley does the same. He likes to cry when I hop on a meeting. Yeah, me too. Yeah, do you not realize how painful this is for me as well? Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to say acquire update user is called that acquire associated sprint ID is called, and we should do a similar thing to there. So that's going to be acquire sprint. The more I'm thinking about this, hold on, can I make this super generic? I wonder if I rewrite that article after your review. Nice. So I have an acquire, but hold on. So in the acquire, I have an acquire base. But this is generic. Oh, because the create entity. What happens if I do public class acquire T entity? Create entity is always going to have. Is that in acquire, like acquire requirement is just here's the basic. Yeah, I suppose that matters. No, it's can't. I was wondering if I could just make it, hey, I want to acquire a thing. What are you guys talking about? Time for PC upgrade. This thing's slugging. Okay, so again, we're gonna do acquire sprint. I think I'd be making it a little bit too hard. And that's a sprint identifier, not an associated sprint identifier, because I'm associating the sprint. And that's sprint associated sprint identifier. Right? That's what I'm after. Gotcha. Acquire sprint. So this is an acquire base sprint. Right? No. I need a command and yeah, so I still need the command, etc. Just inherit from the things. So that's still an acquire. Well, that's repetitive. That needs to be that. That needs to be that. That needs to be that. Return new sprint. Now these entities, view domain, entity sprint, yeah. Yeah, it's that entity. So these creates are okay. Maybe I could. Maybe I could build it. My thought there was if I could just build an acquire, a generic acquire, that took the entity type and just did this stuff. I don't want to have to keep repeating myself, but it seems, oh, it's because I have ints and longs here that I make it necessary to do this, but yeah. Now tails now outside going nuts. Identifier equals identifier. Yeah. Data added. Yeah. Uh, it shouldn't really matter because we should update it anyway. So we have an acquire sprint, right? Identifier. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because acquire users from an older version of the acquire user is a bit heavier. It doesn't use the base. It needs to refactor them. So that gives us the acquire user and the acquire sprint. Send, just copy. These parts, again, it's not the end of the world if I copy and paste them. They're small enough. Identifier, associated sprint identifier, and that returns sprint ID, associated sprint ID. All right. So we're going to validate that we call those things and we pass that. And yeah, it should still fail because I haven't done anything like that. It should now have two failing tests yet. Gonna be one of them days. So again, I'm only handling the update scenario for task right this second because I don't think that associating the sprint at the time you create the task should be something I encourage in the workflow. Because I think if you're associating the sprint as you're creating the task from the um, requirement side right now, I think that's not a behavior I want to encourage. Ultimately, yes, because you will be able to create a task in the sprint. So if you do identify extra work, it shouldn't be difficult to do it and assign it to the sprint. But yeah, because over here we're going to do drag and drop as well, so that will automatically do the updates and stuff. So associated sprint. Feel like right now I can do it in here, right? Because I can say if command dot associated sprint identifier is not null, ta-da, existing dot associated sprint ID equals, yeah, right, and that will assign the sprint ID. So that should pass that test now. Hey, there we go. So we've got the pieces in there. Now, on the sprint side, we do have that issue again where if we if if we yeah, if we create this, yeah, we need to deal with the update because if for whatever reason the sprint isn't there first, and I didn't want to deal with the idea of updates too soon. So, I mean, reality now, the sprint has to exist anyway to do the drop down. So the acquire sprint is not going to matter. So I think we're going to leave that until we get to update sprint. I think that's safer. Yeah, let's do that. I'm not being lazy. I'm just being. I don't need it yet. That situation can't occur. I know it can't occur because the only way I'm going to assign a sprint to a task is by using the drop down that's going to provide the sprints, which is going to pull from the sprints. So I have to have the sprint to do the selection. So in that vein, acquire sprint, this is never going to create anything. It's always going to retrieve the sprint identifier ID. It's just, again, data integrity. If something was to make it so that this didn't exist, this record, this insert wouldn't fail. So if I deleted the sprint, like I broke the system and just removed the sprint, and somehow the record got in here and said, oh, by the way, create this task or update this task, and the sprint ID was associated, it would recreate that record for me. So the data integrity is still there. Unlikely, but it does mean that this can't fail for associated data being missing. So on that vein, you could argue that what I'm doing here is telling a lie because I'm saying that it might not exist. Whereas really the acquire is just making sure that we don't care how you get that thing or where it gets from or whatever. We just need an ID to associate it with it, and then we're good. So, so I'm sticking on that. And, yeah. Okay, so now when we update a task, if we associate sprint, we will get it. So the task receiver will pass the associated sprint ID through. Let me make sure I didn't have any tests. No, I just did the integration for sprint there, not task. That will now update. So with that done, that will update the view record. That will update the, so we'll be able to update this, associate the sprint. It will update the view record. It will, so the sprint is associated. And now we just need to modify, what else do we need to modify? Associate sprint with task, created, acquire sprint. Um, hold up. To get to this point, sprint should never not exist. So do that. I've got to figure out how I want to document the architecture as well. I've been thinking more about this since I saw, like, there's a lot of patterns in here. You know, there's general flow is easy, but typical execution, right? The API to the command, to the handler, to the domain events, to the subscription mediator, to the integration events, or the API side of things is that way. The view side of things is another. It has its own quirks, so I probably need to figure out the right way of documenting those things. Document nothing in code job security. Yeah. I'll be right back. I have two dogs going absolutely nuts, barking at everything outside, and I don't want an issue. Oh no, job security has refused to let anyone even the chance of learning the code base. Let me introduce you to the concept of castle building. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's, I get pride. I understand, right? If I was to let someone come in and start working on the Liquid Sky code, and they started changing things, or you know they had their own way of going about things, and they introduced new patterns, etc. Yeah. Afternoon Rambling Geek, how's it going? In the exciting world of washing machines. I kind of figured you were being sarcastic about it. I just didn't apply. I didn't apply the right level of sarcasm. Better topic is those patterns you're using though. Learning eventing is not as simple as it seems. You never know what they're gonna write. Well, again, you've got to. It's about building a team, right? It's weird because you understand the pattern, so it's so to you it's simple, obvious, and there's no ton to explain. Um, yeah, I suppose. Especially at this point, I've practiced it enough that it just makes sense, right? In the way I'm doing it. And again, I don't know if this is a I don't know if there's people that be like, "Oh, that's a really bad idea," but it feels right to me. It's working very well. Good work from home, waiting for it to land. I've not done much working today though. I'm finding it hard to focus, get into things today. Those days happen. That's okay. Yeah. So my Friday already has one meeting on it. I've got to schedule two more as soon as I start, and I've got to schedule three more. So my Friday might go by very quickly or take forever because I'm the one doing the meetings, not just attending. Come on, Luke, sit down. Um, okay, so we need to. So Dota, I mean, if you wanna ask any questions on this, either on stream or off stream, you're more than welcome. I'm happy to go through it and dig through. Um, you know, um, on the whole eventing thing. Hey, what are you doing? Come on, lay down, both of you. Come on, go girl Taylor. Um, no worries. I just said on the eventing thing, you said it's easy to me. It makes sense. There's a lot to learn, but I was saying if you want to dig through any of this, if you want to on stream or off stream, just let me know. And we can always talk about it. So right now the we have the ability to update the task with the associated sprint, and that will publish the integration event. The integration event will get consumed by the view and it will update the task on the view side. So now we could display which sprint a task is associated with. We just need to modify the GraphQL part to include that information. So, yeah, no worries. I'm not going anywhere. Speaking of how accurate are your estimates, yeah. Um, so I know I brought this up to you guys last night. Um, but it made me realize just how far off my time estimate. What are you doing, dogs? Why are you chewing plastic, bud? No. I originally estimated 2 to 3 days to do a single type hero PR. It's now been 2 to 3 weekends already. Yeah. So when I when I started doing the sprint stuff, right? When I started doing all this stuff, I said, "Oh, we'll get to this today," and we never got to that today. And then the next day, I said the same thing. I said, "Oh, we'll get to this today," and we never got to that thing. So my stream titles were completely off because I never got to the thing I was aiming for. Now, again, some of it's due to, I can't control the pace of chat. I do prefer to chat over the code if people are asking questions or discussing things. I think that's a more practical use of the time. Dog, you are a challenge. Sorry. It was more practical to do that than it was to try and do the BRB screen and do everything else. So my apologies if you saw my back. He knocked over a box that had my electronic stuff in, which also has cotton swabs, and was chewing them. Estimations, some of the inputs to get the estimates are useful. All models are wrong, but I think the output, the estimations are typically so off they have no real use. I mean, sure, but this model is more than wrong. I think a level of confidence goes into planning, and that confidence can be easily swayed by the feeling that something is a little bit easier than maybe you think it is. For me, my estimates were off because I didn't foresee some of the data issues. Or I didn't foresee some of the quirks of, oh, well, hold on. I didn't think of this impact of this data changing. I just thought, oh, well, we'll update this data and capture this data. Oh, well, now this has to change. So now I have to go off and do other work that I didn't expect in the first pass. Even though the pattern of the system is understood, there's still side effects that I might not foresee in there. Like making tasks independent has a lot of value, and that's a way to get estimates to be more accurate, shorter. If you have a bunch of blocking tasks, you're in waterfall. Trying to get better at figuring out how to task stuff out is definitely a talent. You know, in this instance, I think I task out basically and again, we're going to practice, right? We're going to go through this and we can definitely discuss as we go forward, like, oh, that task doesn't make sense. You should make that a smaller task. This should be a task. That should be a task, right? Now, a task and a PR, we're going to get into that soon because obviously right now I'm doing everything under one branch, which is a little risky, but that's just because it's way more practical for me to do everything in one chunk. But we can talk about how that breaks down later once we see it. Lowering the risk of a task is also worthwhile when you story point something accurately. That is a step of that process. Well, again, story pointing is part guess, part confidence. If you have a lot of unknowns, you know, there's the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, right? But if you have a lot of unknown unknowns, then you shouldn't take the task. If you have a lot of known unknowns, you should consider how that effort's going to work out. A little unknown is okay, and that's kind of built in. How complex is this? I have to explore. You shouldn't, but I think that developers need to go and at least read the code related to what the thing is they're being asked to do to kind of get a feel. The bare minimum, when you see you see a requirement, you should go and at least go through a quick overview at the very least, a quick overview of what the code path looked like. Now, again, on my time estimates, it wouldn't actually have saved me because the time was lost in misunderstood requirements that I didn't see until I started writing the tests out. Yeah, but at the very minimum, you should understand what needs to change to accommodate this feature. What are the challenges in this? Yeah. So that's a thing that all developers should do. Well, not specific code. You don't want to get into the habit of dictating what should change. But you want to record. You want to, again, you should be discussing. It shouldn't be, oh, I went off and did this, and I went off and did this, and now I have an assumption, so now I'm going to 0.5. It should be, well, we need to change this, and this. No, we don't. I think we need to change this and this. oh, why do you think that? And that discussion should happen because you've both understood enough of what needs to change to make the change, and you can get rid of those assumptions at the point you go to the story point. So, you know, you still might have different interpretations, but it's worth discussing and making sure you go through. Um, and we often don't do that. We often, it's just adding a button on a screen. It's fine. It's a one, right? What does the button do? How does it affect the code? What does it change? Have you gone and looked at the back end? Do you understand any of those things? So it, you've got to take the time to understand your own system and understand the code you're working in. And it's why making the code you're working in easier to understand helps, because if you're writing obscure code or code, you're writing code quickly to solve a problem, and later on you come back and you can't understand a word of it because it was done in a rush to get something done, or you dump comments all over the place. That code's harder to maintain. It's also understanding what the customer expectations are if it's customer driven. Yeah, the line between your expertise and what the customer wants. But that shouldn't go into your estimation. But as you grow with the domain, you should understand more and more of. You should understand. Oh well, hold on. This customer is going to be affected by this because this is a side effect of this change that no one's thought about. So let's raise it, right? So yeah, understanding the customer does help you identify potential problems, etc. Canny, hello, how are you doing? So Canny is a I think you firmly land in the polyglot world of coding. You work in Godot, or you're playing Godot on stream with both the C sharp and the GD script versions, and has built a library called Twitcher, which is like a Twitch integration for Godot, so that you can hook in overlays and build cool things there, um, including like everything. Like it's a very thorough library, worth checking out. Okay. So, yes. This conversation plays into my article, and so does the stream title. Yeah. I mean, it's been weighing on me more and more just how off I've been. And I know I've said time estimates are bad and we're bad at time estimates, but I keep throwing them out anyway. It's a natural thing. That's what should be obvious, right? I'm naturally throwing out time estimates because I want to get something done and I want to say, hey, by the way, you should expect this because then, especially from a stream perspective, is hey, here's what we're going to do today. Um, so yeah, that's where we're going. We're going over here. we were we were distracted. So the tasks view, right, now should pull a sprint if it's associated. Right, that's what we want to do. Modify view. So we query that. Let's go here. Let's go. What's this one? This is, yeah, Control Shift Q. So that's our task view, and we want to left join sprints s on t dot associated sprint ID equals s dot ID. Did we not modify that table yet? I don't think we modified that table yet. We didn't modify that table yet. How accurate are your time estimates? My 5 cents. I set the time frame always to X2 or X3, the time it actually needs to get stuff done. That may be not exactly be this task, but reduces technical debt around it. Call it cleanup time bonus. Yeah, that is an extremely common approach to whatever time estimate you take. double or triple it, right? So if you want to, if you say in your head 1 day, make it 3 days, just so you have that time. Um, I think, yeah. I mean, yeah, building padding in it, from a time perspective, you're oftentimes going to give yourself enough time doing that. Um, but yeah. So what have I said here? So I'm just gonna verify that I changed the thing I thought I changed. So we added associated sprint identifier onto the task entity. Right. There is no, that's tasks. That's the task side of things. I'm on the view side of things. So we changed this task to have associated sprint ID. So we need associated sprint ID on this one. Otherwise, things are going to go pear-shaped fast. This can be null. Okay, so we do that. And then we go and change the view tasks. And we have associated sprint ID int that can be null, right? Yeah. Um, yeah, time estimates. I personally feel that time estimates kind of play into deadlines. And that when you're giving time estimates, people say, okay, well, by the 21st, we'll have this, and this. And they use those time estimates incorrectly. I mean, any estimate can be used incorrectly, right? Realistically, this time estimates, all points, or however you want to do things, it all comes down to, does the business know how to adapt to you being wrong? And can you be ever more accurate given enough time to make the code base way more maintainable and focusing your energies in the right places? So all estimates are bad if deadlines are imposed and you play to the deadlines, and yeah, it's a vicious cycle that needs to be broken. So we added the column, right? Associated sprint ID, and I just got rid of that view. Just copied that, so that's not going to help. So let's go to task view, modify view, and paste that in there. And now we're going to do that again. Left join sprints s on t dot associated sprint ID equals s dot ID. The first 90% of the code, unexpected stuff, 3 for additional clearance around in my mind. The first 90% of the code will take 90% of the time. Yeah. I mean, overall, the goal is that you are ahead of time most of the time. Again, even if you're pointing, you're ahead of time most of the time, which gives you enough leeway for the ones that aren't easy. And that's again why it all comes back to, you have to have a code base you understand well enough to estimate. You have to have a code base that you are comfortable changing. You have to have a code base that is able to be adapted. And I'm not saying program for the future. I'm saying, you know, don't be afraid to change that code. Don't be afraid to think, have put unit tests in there, put integration tests in there, put all those sorts of things in there so that you know that you can back up any changes and validate that you haven't introduced more technical debt. So all that cycles into, no matter how you estimate, you want to get more accurate over time, in a code base that you're comfortable being in. From the business perspective, they need to make sure that they understand estimates are estimates and that they can be off and they might not be right. So don't apply hard deadlines on things. Just as you get closer, start to become more confident and set an expectation, be willing to change that expectation, give, plus or minus a while, right? If everyone plays the part properly, things will work. My day against this problem is when 90% is done, increase the last 10% to a much bigger thing goes faster again. Well, if you've got a process that has constantly changing requirements, i.e., moving goalposts, then it's all moot. All estimates are bad. Yeah. The scope should not change once you've started the work. Maybe part of the problem is thinking the estimate equals the output. The code equals the code produced. The output is the code, not estimates. Yeah. What's not very agile? Changing requirements. That's completely anti-agile. Pay me to write the code, not estimate tasks, basically. Yeah. Any estimate, whether it be points or time, is your best guess as an expert on the system. If you don't feel confident, i.e., you're not an expert on the system, it is your job. Right? You are hired to be an expert on the system. So it is your job to go off and make sure you understand the system well enough to estimate more accurately and not be, oh, it's terrible. I can't do this. It's going to take 10 weeks, etc. Actually go and quantify what is going to take 10 weeks. Why is it going to take 10 weeks? And if you can't give an accurate estimate, the business has to understand that they're going to get something they're not expecting. S dot. Actually, we don't need to modify the view. We don't need to modify the view because we can pull the sprint. We just need to modify the code side. The view doesn't need to change because the view is pulling the data that it can't. It's pulling the readable data, right? It doesn't. Yeah, I'm flattening the data there. I don't need to do this. I probably need to change this. From one perspective, if we figure out all the requirements, maybe we can make these guesses better. From another perspective, if we just let the requirements emerge, maybe we can react better. Too much of either. But so this system, right? I am not. I have got an idea of what I want to head towards. Go, and it's getting pushed and pulled in different directions as I grow it. I have a I'll know when I hit the point where I feel it matches what I envisioned or not. Now, that wouldn't be good enough for a product, right? That's not good enough for an actual product because I need a solid goal, right? I need here is what we expect to do and you know this is the MVP, right? Um the requirements are going to change because as you, especially in a system that's unknown, you're going to sorry, from one perspective, figure out other, too much of either will probably result in spaghetti. You have the design, which is part of the requirements, document SkyDraw. Yeah, this is part of the requirements, yes. This is meeting I discussed risk for the business, i.e., not waiting 10 months having nothing to show for it. They pushed back and said we should only be concerned with the technical pieces. In our case, I had to disagree. Absolutely. My biggest problem with estimating times is we do this in a team, and when the estimation goes too far out of bounds, then we need to discuss. And sometimes it's like when I do it, it's probably done in 2 hours. When the other person needs to do it, it needs 2 days. But I don't want to tell him that's just he's just not that good. So I need to lie and also guess what they will estimate to not going. Yeah, yeah. So the question there is, if you are both at the same level, why does it take 8 times longer or more for that person to do it over you, right? What is the change? No, and that's fine. It doesn't matter if one person takes 2 hours and one person takes 3 hours, that doesn't really matter. If one person takes 2 hours and the other takes 2 days, right? So, and this is another challenge with time estimation. If the junior, so the difficulty in the system, if you're using points, the difficulty of making the change is the same. The challenge is the understanding of making the change and how best to approach it. Then in those scenarios, I mean, I believe you're in consulting, so it's probably not as feasible. But in those scenarios, normally I'd say, well, we need to do more pairing to get that junior up by a day, at least, so that they can get faster and faster. Um, that's how I would handle that. I'd say, okay, well, you're going to pair with this person because they've got the experience to go through it and increase that confidence and knowledge. But yeah, one team ever doing 30 points a sprint, another doing 3 points. Drawing attention to that fact is probably not particularly helpful. But again, rising tide. Um, in the event that that is happening, where one team member is just blitzing stories and the other's not, is the first question is the person who's blitzing stories the quality? Um, um, is the quality as high? Um, but also, um, how do you again even that gap? Yeah. The problem most of the time, the client is also in this discussion, and yeah, I think you've got a problem with who's when you're being asked to do things, and um, that sounds like a business model that is basically forcing you to. It's kind of like forcing yourself to give yourself your own deadlines. Yeah, yeah. I think a good team, an actual team, not a group of people, a team understands the differences and understands the strengths and weaknesses and uses those to their advantages. So, for example, I was telling you about the team yesterday. Names are going to remain away from this one, but one person on the team really loved the client side and took great care with it. So that person was the lead front end, but every story that had front end, he had to review more. So he was the primary reviewer because he had that skill. It was recognizing that that person had more skill there. When it came to things like Kafka, I took those things and I reviewed those things because I had more skill on that side of things, right? So it's recognizing that the team can work when balanced well and play to the strengths and weaknesses of the team. In Canny's case, that's just messed up. That's a business model that's basically making the developers tie their own. Well, I'm not going to say it on the stream. Um, yeah, I think you get the principle I'm going for there. Okay, that's a broken. Yeah, tie their own shoes. That's a broken model. Well, that was 100 points. We're rich. Look, we got it done in an hour. Uh, in that case, fire the good developers. You'll make more. I don't think Kanye wants to be fired in this scenario. Um, yeah, we have a change we can make. I don't need views. I don't need a view in a lot of these cases. I've just created a massive technical debt. Just dawned on me why I'm being idiotic. Anyway, that doesn't matter right this second. That doesn't change anything. We can change that later. And I'll happily remember that technical debt. So the problem is that the view side of things, this task now needs public virtual sprint associated sprint get, and we need public int associated sprint. It's not identifier, it's ID. Sorry. Nah, good devs get more points than a shorter time. I put kappa in that sentence, but that's actually an incentive of that billing structure. Exactly, it costs more. Profit margin times time equals money made. So you have a lower profit margin and lower time, less money. Yeah. That's YouTube running around in dust, making me sneeze. Okay, so we have the task, we have the associated sprint ID. Now on the view side of things, we don't need to change anything. So we should be able to run this up. Again, I think that developers we often let ourselves be used as resources. I mean, we talk about we are referred to as resources, right? We are not hammers and saws and paper and ink, etc. We're the craftspeople. We're the people that understand how to make the magic happen and produce the thing that other people want, right? We are a necessary component, and we are not often. We let ourselves be treated like tools, and we try and give in. And it's the argument is always, well, the deadline's a deadline. We've got to get this done. You know, they expect this by then, and those deadlines are often driven by people who just have a desired need to meet a sales deadline, or a customer wants this by then, therefore we must give it by then. And then we stop and we're like, why are things not working? Why is the quality so low? Why are we struggling? Why is our bug fix rate so high? And we don't track the cost of a feature through its lifetime very often. I mean, maybe there's processes that do that. Maybe actual people do, but we don't say, okay, well, we developed this feature in June, and by December, we'd spent 32 hours of support on it. It took 20 hours to develop, right? So the cost of support of it was way higher. What went wrong, right? So we don't often track that cost. And maybe we do, and I don't see it from a management side, but yeah. Senior needs to get the quality high and juniors earn the money. That's the reason I'm happy that I'm meanwhile a one-man army in the company. This is why the customer should pay in terms of value, pay expensive developers expensive prices, and they get better results. I've seen some terrible consultants that get lots of money. They're expensive, they're not good. And again, incentivizing speed, right? And when you have someone who is not um sorry, not incentivized to be um they're not incentivized to be good. They're incentivized to be quick. Yeah. Okay, let's start this up and see. My boss asked support to give him a report so we could factor in support costs for this potential client. Talking devs, not consultants. Expensive consultants, probably just very confident. Yes. Um, I thought it to double it so I could fix it. Support cost of hold on. Calculating a report to factor support report to identify potential client support costs. You enjoying that, bud? Sorry, that breaks my brain. Okay. Liquid sky running, liquid sky running. Let's go. That's a terrible metric. So what? I don't. What? It's a potential customer, and you're starting by figuring out what their support demands. Support requests for users. This potential client would bring in double the MAL, MAU. Make sure you factor in high support period immediately after deployment. I don't get the idea of rubbing your hands at rubbing your hands at the potential for support. Like we're gonna get rich. We're gonna support the application. Like my brain doesn't comprehend it. Okay, so here's we go. So closing sprints. So we added closing sprints, and now closing sprints has come into view. This is a thing that we planned. We pushed out to next week. We're within 7 days, so now closing sprints comes into view. This is now something we need to focus on. Now again, the idea is that this review date keeps moving. You know, we keep moving it forward while the thing is ready, and we're going to talk about when this goes out of this specific view. But it does kind of say, hey, you now need to look at this. It's in preparing, so you need to get this to. The likelihood is we need to get this to ready for planning, and then get it to in progress, right? So we might introduce planned as an actual status as well, because I think ready for planning and then in progress doesn't make sense. I think planned means, yeah, we've got it, we just don't have we haven't started the work yet. Remember, we hired support people, we need devs. I'm sure this justification was that we'll probably need more support people, but if we had devs fixing the issues, yes, cost of supporting software, they should be passed to the customer. I'm not debating I'm not debating that support is necessary. I'm not debating that there's costs associated. I get the costs associated. What I don't get is planning what you're going to get from them. Yeah. I think that the right focus is to start with. I mean, maybe there is a focus and I'm missing something, but the right focus would be to start with, okay, what does this customer need to stop being a potential and start being a customer, right? Like the support aside, how do you onboard them? What the size? Yeah, I get that you've got to estimate, like, okay, well, based upon an average customer, we take this much support. Do we have capacity to deal with that? I get the concepts there. But like, is like, how much are they gonna, um, uh, um yeah, what's the cost? Yeah. Because again, if you don't know that the average cost of your general customer is of certain size, you shouldn't need a report for this. This should be kind of understood. Like an average customer of 5 users costs X amount in support a month. They have, these are the general support paths. But support is something you should be worrying about cutting down, not increasing or yeah. Let's like again ask what people thought the weather would be like. I was such a troll even at 18. Yeah. Oh well. Okay. So we have tasks. Let's go to this. Um application, access token, expand that, copy the value, go to here, apply that. So there's our sprints and get task. Now we should be able to do associated sprint, and that should not offer us ID, right? Yeah, because then we would do IDs, identifier, name, right? And we'd run that and it's going to come back null. Right, best do. No, invalid column name, associated sprint identifier. Yeah, that's correct. Ants. Another thing, do some of you make C4 diagrams? I'm so confused by the complexity of them. C4 diagrams. I will not make a pun. I will not make a pun. Lean graphical notation for visualizing software architecture. Sends email using email system. Sends emails to personal banking customer. What? Web application delivers to the customer's web browser. Single page application. Makes API calls to. Okay, I kind of get it. Like it's not a million miles away, right? If I start putting labels on there and say sends integration events to Kafka. um, Consumes events from Kafka. Sorry, that's how I was reading that in my head. Oh, I was reading it out loud as well, so yeah. But that's how I'm doing it. Like, I kind of get it. My knee-jerk reaction was, oh, yeah, another way of doing diagramming, and then I started to read them, and I'm like, okay, that actually reads pretty easily. Well, the good news is it's higher level, right? I see the point of a customer facing version, right? Because I mean, realistically, mine is like, um, yeah, of course they are. Okay, so what did I do wrong here? So this is viewing tasks. So the view task has an associated sprint ID. So why am I getting to does not know column associated sprint identifier? What did I screw up here? So this task here, I shouldn't need, on the view side, I should not be asking for associated sprint ID. This is work we're talking about, not fun. What are you doing? Associated sprint ID. So that failed at the GraphQL side on tasks. So view task is this. Oh, did I associated sprint identifier? Associated sprint. Start that up again, try. Yeah. We got up to 6 concurrent views on YouTube at one point. That's awesome. I have 0, but I mentioned that I'm a one-man army. That's probably do everything from architecture over first level support over implementing until deployment and maintenance hit there. The longer I do this job, the more I want to do this as a hobby over doing it as a job. Like real, for real. I don't want to. I don't want to. I want to do this because I'm having fun, and I think the problem when you start doing it for a job, maybe if I owned my own company, I was running my own software, and or I had more control over the overall product, maybe I'd feel differently. But while I am trying to work in other people's stuff, I want to aim towards a day where I can do another job or no job. Being rich would be good. And just do software development because I enjoy doing it, not because I have to do it. I need to reduce the amount of work for every single job, otherwise I can't do this anymore and it would overwhelm me. Yeah, it's yeah. Why did this complain though? Hold on. What are you? Let's have a look. Did I call? Did I? Where did I put my invalid column name associated sprint ID? Invalid column name associated sprint identifier. What? Okay. So what did I screw up? So it failed on get task. Infrastructure, context configuration, view, task configuration. There's no extra pieces there. There's no tasks here, columns, associated sprint ID, which is nullable. And the views, tasks, view does not have any concept of sprint ID. Oh, that's the problem. Modify view. I still need the sprint ID. I still need the associated sprint ID because I'm pulling out the object. T dot associated sprint ID. Right. I still need that value. SQL scripts generate DDL. View, views, sprints. No, tasks. I'm a liability today. Okay, let's start that again. Stop that. Run that. I really don't care what I program. When it's challenging and fun in the end, I'm fine. I feel that. Yeah, I want challenging and fun. And the fun part comes from the learning and the growth for me. It comes from tinkering with ideas and building new software. It's why I'm happier on the back end. I like trying to learn new ways of solving problems. I'm not a big data engineer. I'm not a big AI nerd or anything like that, but I do love just building software and trying to learn and grow new ways of building software. So getting things done. Yeah. Okay, that should work. Working on me. Oh, come on. Invalid colony associated sprint identifier. Where? We got rid of one problem. Where? Query tasks, right? But what is referring to associated sprint identifier? Select associate identifier, associated sprint ID, associated sprint identifier. What? Did I modify this and get no? Have I included the wrong domain entities view? That's interesting. It now knows that's used, but that's fine. Associated sprint ID. It was clearly trying to ask for associated sprint identifier. Is that because of that? Let's find out. I didn't even think of, yeah, task. But again, I still feel that it's the right thing to do to build this with still tasks because that's the way they're laid out. I mean, you could argue that they are stories. We can get into that debate later. Um, but yeah, I still think they're tasks. So let's try this again. This is still going to fail. Invalid column name, associated sprint identifier. This is something really stupid. I know it's a. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's do Control Shift F project solution associated sprint identifier. Task domain, tasks publisher, tasks, task integration event. Where in the whole heck are you actually pulling that from? Task configuration. But that's in tasks infrastructure, right? I'm in view. So the way this works, the view receiver takes the task, has the associated sprint identifier, and updates it. It's not that that's erroring, right? It's my query that's erroring. So we go into there, we say, oh, we're updating the existing task, and we get the sprint ID off the associated sprint identifier. So at this point, associated sprint identifier is gone. I'm suffering with the complexity of C4. Uh, well, we might try that one day because it looks kind of fun from a diagramming concept. So we get rid of associated sprint identifier and we make it associated sprint ID. So where the heck is, so then we go to the application, we go to the integration, that's in there. The domain entity, so we have update, have we included the wrong model? Task, view task, sprints. Yeah, it's all in view. Update DB context. Yeah, we haven't included the wrong models. We included the right versions there. We have configuration for view task. There's nothing special there. There's nothing special there. In our domain, our entities, our task here has associated sprint ID. Our sprint has that. Our view here has associated sprint ID. I don't see associated sprint identifier anywhere in that. Believe that I could not use virtual on these because I'm using them for query. I don't think I need virtual on these because entity framework's gonna not. It's not gonna put tracking on them. I don't believe. Actually, that's a good question. Am I? I bet I'm not. Oh no, I am because the context should be doing no tracking when I set it up. Not that I'm trying to completely divert. Yeah, no tracking. So the view doesn't do any tracking, so you can't, even if you pulled it out, you can't do anything to modify the data. Well, you can, but you can reattach it. Task type, associated sprint ID. See, and this is why time estimates are bad. Emotional support by colleagues. I thought you were a one-man army. You don't have colleagues. You're just canny. Um, why? Why is this so difficult? Like I couldn't predict this. I do not have. I do not have. It's something. It's something I've done. It's something silly. I don't dispute this. But what the heck have I done? Don't don't. Associated sprint ID. So why? Why are you pulling associated sprint identifier? Let's try this. Let's try running it once more. Let's refresh the schema, see if it pulls. So the problem is that when I try to query, it is complaining that it cannot find the column associated sprint identifier. The problem with that is, so if I do associated sprint here, this should be null anyway, right? This should come back as null. The problem is there's no such thing as associated sprint identifier at this phase. So this query now should be select star from task, right? And it's complaining invalid column name associated sprint identifier. So for some reason, it believes that that task, well, querying from GraphQL. So the GraphQL query is being constructed, and ultimately it comes to this endpoint, the get task, and it's saying invalid column name associated sprint identifier. But in no way, shape, or form have I told it there should be an associated sprint identifier there. Nor should I have one, because the tasks view that it's pulling from and I do it for the other things. But again, I don't believe they're necessary either. I don't think I need these anymore. Because I think I can actually do this without actually doing any joins. I can just make these all. Well, the stat trace is showing me that this query. That's it. Come on, Ryder. So invalid column name at I believe what did I see before? I saw it before at yeah, so it goes to run this query, right? So it runs this query. Oh my goodness. So it's thinking, apart from the formatting, that that's the query it's running. Scanning items. That's what that view looks like. Identifier. So, well, firstly, the problem is at the schema level, because that shouldn't even think it's there. But nowhere in here am I asking for associated sprint identifier. Right. So the goal is here that the reason I do expose the DB context is so that I basically can change the number of fields I get and it will adapt the actual SQL query. Now the cost of that is hit the Explorer. Hit the Explorer. What? That's not going to tell me anything. That's just going to tell me that it exploded at the SQL level, right? Invalid column name. That's the crux of it. It's trying to query that thing. So why is it pulling these things, right? Associated sprint ID does exist on the actual task. On the task view, I do have associated sprint ID, right? So of course, I'm embracing work and the delivery happens at the same time. Sorry if I'm geek. That's the way life goes, right? So, why is it trying to pull this information? what where's it pulling this from? Where's it deciding this from? Because nowhere in my GraphQL statement am I doing that. Yeah. So stat trace isn't going to give me much more information than that column because it ultimately is failing at the SQL level. So it's failing on the DB context internal. So this, it's not my code that's actually the fault. It's not going to tell me, oh, by the way, it's pulling it from this model. That's a sad side effect of the way that's broken. But I'm not giving it anything that says that that works. So let's do this. Let's make sure the query works without. So we're not going to pull anything to do with with associated sprint. You're still going to blow up. Interesting. I'm pulling the wrong version. I've got to be. Something's got to be going weird here. Associated sprint ID. Associated sprint. So it should be smart enough to know that this matches this, by the way. So that's a common pattern. What am I missing? What am I missing? These views are going to get overhauled anyway, but because it just dawned on me that I don't actually need to pull identifiers through. I can just pull the entities and change the model so that I can go and ask for the actual thing. I'm condensing information here, and I don't necessarily need to do it. But either way, that's not the problem. Associated sprint. That's still the view version of the sprint, right? So that's still this view. An identifier, name, start date, end date, last updated, created by update user, etc. That's still this view. Yeah, so the integration event is the thing that's published from tasks, in this case, to say the task was updated. The receiver receives the integration event, which does have associated associated sprint identifier, because that's right. It has a GUID. That then goes and says, oh, cool, get me the sprint and attach the sprint ID. So this side of things, for whatever reason, is asking for a field that doesn't exist in the concept in the view concept. And I'm not sure I understand why that is happening. Hey Kimbiko, how you doing? In your learning text blurb on Twitch, there's a missing double quote and it's driving me mad. Uh-oh. In my learning text blurb. I don't know. Hey yo. How's that? That fixed? I assume you mean that I don't know. Come on. Okay. So why is this? Why are you asking for anything? So the concept here is that I shouldn't be asking. Thank you, Kimbiko. How are you doing today? Now that we've solved that problem. So it shouldn't even be querying Sprint at all. So why is it pulling it through? Right? So we get where the identifier and the tenant identifier, that's fine. The ViewDB context does not pull any additional things. The task itself has a virtual associated sprint. Let's do this. Let's remove this. If this still pulls it now, I have no idea, and yeah. It is going to be something very simple. Oh, that's good. There we go. Okay, so that's the exclusion of that field. Because again, you don't want to expose those IDs publicly. So when you do the GraphQL query, you want to hide the actual IDs. It can still use them in the back end. It just doesn't ever serialize them down to the front end. Right. So let's run that again. Okay, that's up and running. So now let's query this. If it still says sprint identifier, associated sprint identifier now, GraphQL doesn't work the way I think it does. This should work. There we go. So we get the data now. So let's do this. Let's modify that again. Stop that running. Let's go back to task in the view domain. Let's add public int associated sprint ID. Again, that is in the view, right? In the view. Modify view, associated sprint ID. That is valid because the task does have an associated sprint ID, right? Associated sprint ID. And that is, I mean, it's always null, but that's okay. So let's run that again now. So I'm not going to do the virtual, I'm not going to do the navigation property here. I'm just going to do the rest. Napalm, good morning. How you doing? Don't forget, if you like .NET content and chat, online does stream on Fridays. Hopefully today is no different. Friday is community day, so an open Discord and good friendly chat. Good. How's the headache, by the way? I apologize for not asking that. You weren't having a good time yesterday. I've only heard people celebrate GraphQL from a client's point of view. How is it to implement on the back end? I don't understand how fetch only requested data can neatly be implemented. I'm probably missing something fundamental. So I think I think I was in the same boat. I think I found a solution that works, that fits for me and my understanding of GraphQL. So from the back end here, what I'm doing is my architecture is laid out such that the actual storage of the data happens in different APIs and publishes that data. This view component consumes that data into a database that's just to help normalize it or denormalize it, however I need to twist it to make it friendly to the view. So it pulls in all the data from all the components. What I've done here is I've created an update and a view version of it. So I've actually created a set of views around, and everything's called view, so it's really more confusing. A set of actual views around the data, and those are what I expose on the context that I map to GraphQL. So at the GraphQL layer, all I'm doing is literally creating the GraphQL endpoint, I suppose, and allowing myself to use projection and stuff, so that that ultimately just becomes a SQL query. So because of the way this works, it binds to the iQueryable, and the GraphQL layer just kind of merges in. So you end up with just selecting the fields you need from the object. So for like planning items and users and stuff, I can just pull the data I need. It's useful from the planning item perspective because on the, I can't really show it right this second. Maybe I can actually because it's up and running. So from the planning item perspective here, when I load into the screen, I ask for all this data, right? But then I can use a modified version of the same query without changing the views in the back end to pull more data when I click on something. So I can just add extra fields into GraphQL and say, oh, now I want all this extra information on this same object, but the query looks almost identical. So I think I mean, it feels like it's working very well for me. It does allow me to say, okay, I don't need this on this screen. I need this on this screen. I can show more or less without changing different APIs or whatever. So, but it does rely heavily on me building a schema that is built specifically. All the data and stuff is built specifically for the query side of things. I'm not touching the back end, the core storage of the data. It's a copy of that data. And I like it this way because it means I'm not trying to use the same context that I'm using to write data as I am to query it. And I'm also using views to kind of consolidate that information down. Although, again, this stream I've kind of identified, I might actually not need to use views. It was rough, but did clear up by late morning. I was still able to get a bunch of stuff done, and I'm pressing on from there to get as much as I can. I did get content in on the progress of this effort, so I have that looming. Oh, fun. So yeah, GraphQL is working well for me in this case so far. I do enjoy using it. I probably am not using it right. There's still a lot to learn, but that's the point. Okay, so wait. Oh yeah. So what I'm trying to get to, and again, this is another thing. My estimate was, oh, I'll just get the view component done at the beginning of the stream, and we'll get to the point where we can go and do the edit. I'm completely off. I'm almost at the end of the stream, and okay, I've talked a little bit, but I still don't have that drop down on the task, right? So all manner of things can happen. Come on, don't fail. Okay, so we can still query the tasks overall. Let's get a single task. Let's make sure we update the schema there. If we get a single task, does that work? Yep, a single task works. So now let's get the associated sprint ID. Okay. So now let's stop running again. So all I did there was put back associated sprint ID. So now let's do public virtual sprint, and that is the view version, and that's associated sprint. Does this issue touch any of the code you copy and pasted when you said this shouldn't be an issue? You try to call me out for copying and pasting code. So the only thing that I can think of, did I misname this? Or is it automatically assuming an identifier should be attached rather than an ID? I'm saying it's nullable. It works for updated user. No, it's not. I can't remember why I copy and pasted right this second. And B, no, it didn't cause a problem. Could it have done? Not in this scenario. Oh, what now? Address already in use. Oh, come on. So if you are new to the stream and you're interested in what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask questions. I'm always open to uh, conversation around the project, around the planning. Um, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing. It seems like the API's flexibility does influence the backend design quite a bit. Like it doesn't look straightforward to add a GraphQL to any backend that already exposes REST or RPC endpoints, whereas the latter two can more easily be swapped out for each other. Yeah, I think being able to so I've tried to introduce GraphQL before into an API that I was using for, because I know you can do mutations in GraphQL. I'm not intending to use mutations. It's a read only thing for me. But I've tried to introduce it in the past, and it's tripped me up because again, one of the my reasons for doing it this way is every component of this system can be fit for its purpose. So the client, it has APIs available to it. It talks through the API gateway, so it doesn't know that there's actually, 6 APIs behind the scenes right now. When it creates a planning item from the client, it just says, "Hey, save the planning item," right? It gets routed to the planning service, and that stores the data. That publishes integration events, which the rest of the system can listen to and do what they need to do. So every time I have different storage requirements, or every time I do different things, I'm not trying to do it all in one database with one data set. And yeah, it's working well for me. So the GraphQL piece, I can build this view and tweak GraphQL as I need because I'm in control of the data. I'm in control of how it lays out, and yeah, it gives me that flexibility. If I was trying to stick it into an application where I already had an API, I wouldn't be confident in doing it. And also, it doesn't quite feel natural to expose the DB context right up to what is essentially the API layer, um, until you realize that the API layer is the GraphQL piece sitting in front of it. It's communicating through this as a data connector anyway, so it's okay for this to happen. And again, all I'm doing is returning DB context, uh, uh, iQuerybles, sorry. Um, and, yeah, it means that I can just flex these. My current shop is afraid to use GraphQL for some reason. Oh, you're going to break again. You're going to break, aren't you? Invalid column name associated sprint identifier. So the problem is then that it is assuming that it should look for this by identifier, not ID. That is unusual. So we proved that we could pull this out, and yes, it's null. It doesn't matter. But then when we go to get an associated, why is it pulling that at all? It shouldn't be even touching that yet. Again, I haven't changed anything. I mean, I committed before, didn't I? So question number 1 is, why is it talking about identifier? That shouldn't be happening. Kinbiko, thank you very much for the follow, by the way. Appreciate it. Question number 2, why? Yeah. So 1, why is it talking about identifier? 2, why is it even querying anything? Because I didn't ask it to do that. And that's not the purpose of the query. Is I should get, if I say select ID identifier, this is an alias in GraphQL, by the way, so you can alias the output. So what you pull from and yeah. And yeah, so Dev, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Um, yeah, so if I just pull these columns, that's the select is select title, description, status, planning identifier from tasks. If I say go and get the updated user, it says join updated user on ID because it knows that that's working. That's the purpose of this. And that's how it's been working. So I'm not sure what I'm missing, or if I'm missing a configuration somewhere. Now, this configuration here, this is so that you can't pull the internal IDs. You don't want to expose them down. What is an IRI? What? IRI? I'm not sure. Just talking in general context or how to return an IRI? The IRI of a resource relation instead of an object. So it's like an internationalized resource identifier. It's an internet protocol standard which builds on the uniform resource. So it's being able to, so it's kind of like for a RESTful API, giving a navigational ability so that you can say, okay, here's the reference. So that could be, if you want to return the fact that there is a user, but you don't want to return all the user data, you just say you'd get an IRI to the user, I assume. I'm assuming, I'm not 100% certain, but I would imagine that's the idea, is that then you can say, okay, if you want the user, go to this GraphQL point, and it's the resource locator for that, I assume. Yeah. Yeah. So you can actually, maybe. The IRI of a related sub-resource relation instead of an object. Yeah. So I assume it's the concept. Either way, that's not what should be happening here. Again, it shouldn't be asking for associated sprint identifier at all. It shouldn't even know what associated sprint identifier is. So that's why I'm thinking it's entity framework doing it. But why? Because there's nothing in here saying associated sprint identifier. So the only thing is this. So why is it assuming that that's going to be referenced by identifier rather than ID? Oh, an idiot. It'll work now. I'm going to prove it works before I explain why it works. If you know entity framework, you know why that was done. But I am 99.9% certain that works. I'm wrong. Wow. Okay. So my reasoning. So entity framework join it will join on what it identifies as the primary key identifier, right? This object, so the task, no, the sprint, sorry. The sprint didn't have an ID, right? But then again, neither does task because it's a view, right? So think I'm on the right track with the wrong solution. That's why I use the identifier to link to the view, because that has that. It's actually doing the right thing. It's trying to associate. So the view does not have. Okay. I'm using views. Um, again, to try and cut down some of the complexity of just joining tables all the time, right? What I'm realizing is that I probably could cut out the views and just use the tables, which would reduce complexity of the application. I could just use the tables and link on IDs. So the problem here is that I'm not linking properly. I've got an ID here, but it doesn't need an ID. It needs an identifier because the sprints view has no concept of the ID. If I modify this to have the ID, it will work, but then why don't I just link on the table? So using the views was a way to consolidate the information. Actually, no, the views do have another value as well. Having the views does allow me to do this and make sure that the dates that are coming out are cast correctly as UTC, so they're date time offsets, whereas the data, you can't store date time offsets in the SQL tables. So the views do still have actual value. So the problem is this doesn't need to be associated sprint this needs to be identifier, because this needs to be left join sprints s on t dot associated sprint ID equals s dot ID, right? That needs to pull through there. Invalid column name associated. S dot identifier as associated sprint identifier. So that should work a bit better. So the problem was I'm not mapping the way I think I'm mapping. Need longer than I thought and need to go now. Good luck to be and see you, and everyone have a great weekend. Canny, take care. Thank you very much for coming hanging out today. I wish you luck with your diagrams. Usually faster to link in DB. Yeah. So I do get the benefit of using the views. I get to do the UTC stuff. So I get all the date times coming out in the right format, so that when the client receives it, they get the right thing. This will still fail, I think, because I think I just screwed that up by changing that thing. Oh, now it genuinely failed, because now it will genuinely fail because I don't actually have associated sprint identifier, do I? So let's go fix that. I want to fix this now. So two options. I put the ID on the view, or I link by identifier, which is okay to link because it is unique. It's not like it's a challenge. Oh, come on. I want to get over this hump. So the view sprint, let me make sure. Yeah, I don't use view based. That's bad. So let's undo them. So there's the identifier task. Planning item identifier associated sprint. That's a GUID identifier. So now does that match? I haven't linked these this way before though, have I? But the problem is I'm linking to the view here. This is user. I actually do have the ID. Ah, okay. So I think the better way to do it is actually to do it that way. Yeah, I think it is. I think the sprint needs an ID. I think we need to add that in the view. I know it might seem ridiculous, but I think that's probably a better way of doing it. because now we should get the right behavior and link on the right things. We shouldn't be using it. I mean, we can use the identifiers. The identifiers can be indexed and they can be they're unique. So it's not like it's a big problem, but it's something that I probably should just allow for. And again, I'm using the views because I can change the data. I can modify the data in the view. I can get those date times primarily is the big focus. I don't think Entity Framework naturally supports that, but I could be wrong. I didn't change the other view, did I? Now I'm rushing, which is bad. That should be T dot associated sprint ID. That should go away. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hi, Luke. You gonna come say hi today? Okay, you can come say hi now. It's 9:10. I know. Come on, you gonna say hi? Hi, friend. Okay, we modified the view. Hey, Loki. Come on. He drags his legs up to try and get on top of me. Okay, there you go. Okay, we're going to sleep there now. That's what we want to do. Okay, we can do that, I suppose. Okay, there you go. You okay, bud? Don't crash again. That's not fair. It's crashing again. If it says identify now, I'm done. Why? Why do you test me? Oh dear. Okay. I'm on the right track. I don't know why I'm struggling today to understand a concept that I've clearly been building for months. I don't know why that's asking for identifier there. Sprint now has ID, and the view has ID. So it should be able to join that to that and get the right thing. Unless I'm not mapping the right thing. So I will make that work. So again, I started off the stream with the purpose of, getting the sprints attached to the tasks. I'm yet again one more day behind on doing that. So the next step will be to get, once this is in place, I can do the drop down on the view and I can make it post to the view and then everything else will just work, right? So I can do the drop down with both sides done. So going into next week, the goal will be to start building out the boards. Start trying to figure out that will be the okay. You, Loki, my voice is not good enough to carry all through your head. It's okay. Um, so the goal will be to get the sprint board started. Maybe we can get to the drag and drop, but we'll baby steps. Oh, this is my show now. Yep. His tail's wagging. He's enjoying being here. Um, but yeah. So yeah, we'll get more done. This backlog will start to take shape. As I'm using it, I'm starting to see low key likes to be high key. Yeah, you think? Thank you. Um, um, what are you doing? You okay? Yeah. Um, I'm starting to see struggles with usage, like understanding what's finished. So we might actually get to filtering and stuff next week to kind of allow us to kind of see these things. Also, I want to get into the concept of what does an identifier look like in a system like this. So if you've used tools like Jira, you'll see that a project a project gets a story or a task assigned to it, and a project gets an ID, like a prefix. But how do I do that in a world where I don't have, I'm not joining, these aren't landing in the project. So maybe the group that they're attached to generates the identifier, right? So a group can have an index and then we know what it's assigned to. Um, Sleep in a place where I can't move my arms. This is awful. Um, so, oh dear. Okay. Um, so yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna get more stuff done next week. I'm gonna work on this over the weekend. I have a bit more time, sadly, due to injury, so I am getting some more stuff done. So I'll get that worked on tonight. If you're interested, some nights I do hang out in the Discord and I do work on this as I'm there. So if you're open for more chat and you want to ask more questions about the project, the Discord is always there, and I do regularly jump in there and bring up my screen and start working in there. So I'm always open to questions off stream as well. And if you're just generally more interested in how this stuff works and the technologies involved. So let's go. I'm opening the invitation. Other people can join. It's okay to have conversation. Up to a maximum of 6 people because I do limit it. Okay, so I'm going to try and do a raid while using my hand, my one spare hand, and I can't use the keyboard. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for hanging out. We're gonna go raid full box. Trap, thank you very much for hanging out. I appreciate it as always. And yeah, don't forget One Line Stream has Community Day later on today, which I hope I will have a window to attend, but as of now, it's looking unlikely. So we'll see. If not, I'll start the raid. Okay, I'm gonna go. Thank you very much. Take care. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye all.